The Queen is Dead. By Meep the Changeling. Chapter 33. Burning Sands. David, 4th of Solaris 15 EOH, afternoon. As I looked into the swirling mass of the enemy, I realized that my tactics were essentially useless. If I'd had to command anyone, I'd just get everyone killed. Human tactics do not deal well with an enemy that can fly, let alone in formations so dense it looked like we were being assaulted by a cloud of giant gnats. About the only thing I could think of was to get a few quad flak 38s and make one hell of a last stand. How the hell everyone else was either running about their duties or standing in position with a calm soldierly expression was beyond me. The hell did their boot camps prepare them for? Giant centaur demon rampages? I'd spent the entire sprint over to a group of 5 large pylons wondering exactly how I could help in any capacity other than shoot everything that gets close. I was drawing a complete blank. That wasn't good. I was a soldier, I needed at least a briefing. Turning my head to the tall white princess whose name I didn't catch and sure as hell wasn't going to ask for now, I asked, "All right, what's the plan?" She held up a hoof for me to wait and turned to face a group of a dozen or so unicorns and a few guns. Unlike Kev, their suits had a sheath for a long feline tail, and digitigrade paw-shaped boots, so I guess she was telling the truth about cosmetic alterations. In case I need to use the pylons myself, how do they work? Sun Princess asked. The crystals at the top hold the arcane charge, a unicorn called back while the others carefully went about casting spells or fiddling with knobs. The pylons amplify the power, shape the spell, and project it. They are sort of like your horn, ma'am. Only the spell is built in. Just put energy into the crystals or take it away. And the controls, she asked. For regulating the power and helping restore damage done to the shields. Agayan called, "No time to train you for them, your highness, sorry." "I understand," she commented, "myself and these people will cover you. Keep everything up as long as you can." "Oh," she suddenly pointed a hoof at me, "this unicorn is a transformed diamond dog, he's quite nice and on our side. If the transformation is dispelled mid-battle, don't shoot him." "Good to know, ma'am." A unicorn called. Princess Watts, her face turned back to me, looking up at the sky uneasily. "These devices are allowing us to nest shields. The big dome overhead is actually 3-layered shields, and we have smaller transparent shields beneath it covering specific locations, like the field hospital, and our battlemage trenches. We can selectively raise and lower the shield spells, allowing us to open holes in them for as long as we need while keeping the rest of the shields up. Luna's plan is to open a large hole over there, allowing the swarm a point of entry that's relatively small so we can fill it with spell bolts, arrows, and javelins, while limiting how many can attack us at once. But, last time we fought them they breached our shields, so we have the shields within the main ones to give us places to fall back to. I don't think you can reach the enemy from this position with that musket, but if the enemy does breach the outer shield, we need to keep these mages and technicians safe until they can get the spell back up. Especially because we have some help from outside the shield in the form of... Don't worry about it. Just keep the swarm off everyone here if they break through." I looked over at the spot she had pointed to. It was about 200 yards away, and downhill from our own position. I could see a ton of ponies formed up in ranks, with 5 of the Napanese A.L.I.C.O.R.N.S flanking the formation, which had an overall horseshoe shape around the spot I assumed they were going to open. It was hard to tell from this distance, but it looked as if the Napanese were forming the front line, with some of those super bulky armored ponies who vaguely reminded me of Warhammer figures forming a line behind them to cover everyone else. The especially interesting thing was the formation was 3-dimensional, with bronze-armored Pegasi forming a second level to the formation, and a flight of... Are those dragons? I asked, looking at the slightly bigger than a pony-winged quadrupedal reptiles in the distance with some delighted awe. "No, those are drakes. Dragons are much bigger." Light quipped. "That's about it though. It would be nice to have a true dragon for this. Princess something or other mumbled. But, they still breathe fire and stuff, right? I asked. Depends on the color. Some fire, some ice, some acid, a unicorn tending the pylons remarked. Looks like we mostly have reds and purples. So fire and raw magic. I shook my head and resumed inspecting the formation. The ceiling over the horseshoe formation had some pretty big holes in it, but I supposed it would be hard to hover with bird wings. I turned to look at one of the guns, so, I assume you guys don't have any attack helicopters. Same reason you're not using an otlotl. She shot back. This isn't, Light said, suddenly stopping mid-sentence. I looked over to her with a confused grunt. The mare quickly rushed over to the princess and gently tapped her shoulder. Princess Celestia, this isn't the entire swarm. Part of it is somewhere else. Thank you for saving me an awkward question, random mare. I filed he princess's name away in my brain more carefully this time. How do you know? The princess asked, face instantly hardening into a deep concern. I can hear them. A little. Light replied slowly. Some are here, some are someplace else. I think Chrysalis is here. I'm not sure. She is probably holding some of her forces in reserve. I quipped, she has, well, a lot. There isn't room for all of them at any breach they may make. Celestia nodded slowly, that's likely. Excuse me. She taped the gem in her necklace with her hoof gently. Luna, she said, pausing until the gem glowed purple for an instant, the swarm is holding some of its forces somewhere else. Is your source credible? Luna's voice answered, sounding as if she were a few feet in front of Celestia. Yes. It's Light Stride. She answered. Thank you for the information, Miss Light. Luna thanked. Tia, please ask the field marshal to give them our little surprise early. Open the shield once it's all clear, we'll need to bait their reserve into the open. The princess nodded and tapped her gem again. Field Marshal Lack. She paused, the gem flashed, and then she continued, Field Marshal, this is Celestia. Is your wing ready? We need them now. Enemy moved faster than you estimated. A weathered female voice asked. Yes, they also have a reserve somewhere. Luna wants you to hit them now to try and draw them out. Celestia informed. Understood, bunker down. The voice replied. I blinked twice. Did she say bunker down? Jade nodded, I think so. Advanced civilization. War. Surprise. Oh. I turned my attention to the sand below me and started to dig a pit as quickly as I could. What are you? Lily started. Bunkering down before they drop whatever ordnance that is. I exclaimed, focusing on digging. I suddenly found myself joined by Jade and Lily in my hole digging. I'm glad at least two of my friends came from Sensible Town. Unlike every pony else who sort of just kept going about their business. You know, Lily remarked, you would dig a lot better as a dog. They can dig through rock in a few minutes. Excuse me? I asked, both my eyebrows raising. Jade looked up at me with a shocked expression. You didn't know diamond dogs could dig? Wait, one of the shield mages demanded, how the buck does a diamond dog not know he can d? The sky erupted into bright spots of white. The ground heaved. 5 straight lines of white dots blazed into existence to form lines across the entirety of the dome. Each light was accompanied by a sound like an anvil hitting the deck of a battleship while being struck by lightning. In the heartbeat after the light vanished, the dense clouds of swarming changelings remained. Princess, the marshal's voice crackled a moment later, we got a few, but they have a shield of their own. We could breach it, but from what we can read it's about twice the strength of yours. Anything we fire would hit you guys below. Sorry. Celestia sighed wearily and tapped her necklace to reply, Unders. Ah hell. The marshal cursed, we have a few thousand breaking off to pursue. We'll take care of them and swing back for another run. We can at least pick off a few hundred at a time. Good luck down there. I looked up curiously. A few thousand? Did that leave any noticeable gaps in their swarming cloud? No. No, it did not. Fuck. Luna, Celestia sighed, they've set up their own shield. Pony feathers, Luna muttered in response. All right, we're trapped here for the moment. She's gotten smarter. Open the shield, let's see if she takes the opening. The mages quickly worked their magic. A round portion of the shield at the formation's base flickered and died. The swarm kept flying around the perimeter. The sound of their buzzing now amplified to unsettling levels. The masses surged. The masses heaved. The hole remained unused. A minute passed. The swarm flowed around the shield, their solid barrier of bodies remaining intact. Twilight, see if they are an illusion. Luna's voice crackled faintly. They are real. Twilight said hesitantly after a few moments. I turned to look to other places along the shield. I was no general, but sometimes a soldier's intuition was better than 5 years of officers' school. There had to be something they were doing. Something about their movements had to show some sort of plan or another. They were moving like the threads in a loom, only every thread kept moving instead of stopping to form a row. Their 8-fold helix pattern started at the very top of the shield dome and spiraled over and under its arms as it ran down the sides. It was an intricate and complex pattern which would have been amazing if it didn't look like a blanket made of death slowly pull itself down over us. Down. Wait a minute. I squinted at the closest edge of the shield where it met the sand. The swarm was only moving down. Not one line moved back up. Unless they were pulling back at ground level to loop up again. Jade, I asked urgently, how well can changelings dig? Pretty well. She answered. Her eye widened mid-word. Jade hopped out of the still-in-progress trench. Lily was continuing to expand and shouted, please tell me the shield extends underground. There was a 2-second pause, followed by a frenzy of flashes of magic and shouted orders. Then the earth heaved again. A giant blister of sand pushed up from the ground just behind the infantry formation. 1,000 changelings burst from the sand in a flash of green flames, arcing skywards only to fall like living artillery shells into tents, people, fortifications, everything. At the exact same instant the swarm began to surge through the hole in the shields. Instantly the mass of soldiers exploded into light of all colors. Rays of scorching light streaked through the Ari, bolts of denser magic slamming into the ground, changelings, and others. The sound of spells, screams, shouts, and flames echoed off the shield. I grabbed the M1 off my back, futility fumbling for the trigger with my hooves. Gah! I can't fucking fight like this. I growled. Spinning, I grabbed Lily's shoulder. How do I change back? Just will it. Lily cried, horn blazing blue as the sand around us heaved itself up into a crude earthwork wall. Why did that take so much energy? A shield mage jumped into the now pretty decent trench, her pale blue fur and blue-grey mane covered with sand. The sand is cursed. Second Thaumaturgy War was fought here. This used to be a jungle 6,000 years back. Don't try magic on it again. But thank you. I closed my eyes and did my best to remember being a diamond dog. Was that all I had to do? Something thumped into the sand beside me, ruining my concentration. Again, dark green armor, no robe, and carrying a pretty large weapon I could only describe as an Imperial Stormtrooper's heavy blaster as designed by the Mass Effect crew. Under the condition it looked like something from Flash Gordon's armory. Good thought on the trench there, mate. She called, snapping a bipod down into position. I closed my eyes again, focused. A loud explosion shook the ground. Sand flew everywhere. A volley of energy rays sliced the air just over my head, cutting a massively bulky changeling to pieces as it stood up from a small crater. Gah! Fucking hell! I growled angrily. War is not conductive to Foku. A bolt of green fire slammed into the sand next to me, instantly fusing the grains into a lump of glowing red glass. "Ah shit," the Gaian muttered, "'scuse me." She suddenly pulled herself over me, a large chunk of her left side exposed thanks to a huge chunk taken out of her armor. The smell of burnt hair and flesh signed my nostrils as she slid over me and wrapped the mage in a hug. "Sorry Han. I got 5 minutes tops. Try not to die without me, okay?" Her ears drooped. She wrapped an arm around the injured woman and nodded, "Okay. It just takes a week, right? Yeah. Don't worry, I'll still remember everything." She answered, stripping her helmet's faceplate off to give the mare a kiss, before sliding a pair of brass knuckles on her hands and jumping up onto the top of the trench in one fluid movement. "Right. Let's see how many I can take out before radon poisoning sets in." "The hell do you mean a week?" someone else asked. "She's going to die." "Cloning vats are awesome." Yet someone else shouted over the sizzling of spell bolts. "Oh, that's such horse apples." A distinctly pony voice grumbled, "We stay dead and you all come back? Why the buck aren't we just fielding you guys?" "I'm sorry, the tech won't work on ponies and there's only a few hundred of us who are important enough to get backups." "Why don't you use that anger to push that line back?" someone else shouted back. I took a deep breath, doing my best to clear my head. I needed to block everything out. Needed that moment of silence. Just fucking one. Because fucking hooves can't pull a goddamn trigger. A flurry of green flames pelted the area. Liquefied sand ran down the trench walls. Jade yelped in pain. I snapped my head around. I could see the smoke drifting off the charred slice taken out of her head. I could feel her pain, see her flinching only feet away. I felt my bones pop and grind. Hooves split into hands in a flurry of green sparks. I grabbed my M1. I vaulted out of the trench. I can't remember much after that. Lily, 4th of Solaris 15 EOH, afternoon. I figured, as a veteran of 2 of Applewood's bigger raids, that this battle would just be a really big version of one. This was absolutely nothing like a few hundred hungry peasants attacking with the goal of raiding a warehouse. This was an uncountable mass of people with their only goal being to kill us all. I winced as a flurry of spell bolts slammed into the sand just above my head. I hadn't dug this thing anywhere nearly deep enough. Faust's blood, why did the sand resist magic so much? I was down at least a third of my full strength from making a 6-pony wide hole in some sand. My breath came in rapid gasps. I could hear people shouting around me, but not anything they were saying. It was all lost to the sheer panic response of being in a hail made of fire. I vaguely noticed someone jump out of the trench as a spellbolt splattered against the shields my earrings provided. I felt the piercings flare with heat for a brief instant as the shields struggled under the bolt's energy, then cooled, fortunately still working. That had been mother-bucking close. The hay was I doing here? I barely knew how to fight. I was already low on power. Where the buck was Princess Celestia? I needed that promised teleport, now. Jade's pained cry snapped me back into the moment. I twisted to see how badly she had been hurt. I felt a rotten boiling in my guts. I should have put up a shield this whole time, this was all my fault. I flinched as I saw the line burnt across her head, taking a half-hoof deep chunk clean out. Thank Faust she was a changeling and thus didn't have a central nervous system, or that would have been fata. David burst into green flames, transforming back to his dog form with the most vengeful growl of rage since the dawn of time. The second his hands reformed, he grabbed the gun he'd been given and vaulted out of the trench, narrowly being missed by 2 separate bolts. Oh no! No pony ever told him changelings aren't killed with a headshot. It's not a vital organ. He thought they'd just killed weight. Had Jade been hit in the hearts too? I quickly glanced down. Jade groaned and pushed herself up, sparks of magic knitting the head wound shut. Ow! 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 She moaned. Keep your head down if you're not firing. The blue mare next to her hissed in a distressed tone. Wait! Did David just jump up there? Jade asked me with a horrified expression on her face. Oh Big Mitch! I groaned. I couldn't let my friend get himself killed because he didn't know interspecies anatomy. I gathered my hooves under me and jumped out of the trench. I could see a huge chunk of the battle now. The densest part was where the hole in the shield had been opened. The entire area was an indistinguishable mass of eldritch fire, flashes of lightning, and smoke. The rest of the camp was filled with isolated clusters of besieged ponies fighting off the swarm from all sides. Like the one I was in. Completely surrounded including overhead, with only a half-dozen Pegasi keeping the airborne changelings from just hitting us from the air. A combination of a sharp crack and a dull thud managed to pierce the sounds of battle. I saw a changeling jolt a full 3 feet up from where it had been hovering, then drop to the sands in a heap, the entire barrel scooped out as if by a giant spoon. What? They bug did that? I saw David out of the corner of my eye, turned my head just in time to see him smash the flat section of his weapon into a changeling's face, pin it underfoot, flip the weapon around and... Oh! That's what did that! That was no musket. That thing kicked up sand like a small wind. Also it just fired 3 times in a row. 3 changelings converged on David from above. I threw a spell bolt, grazing one's back. David spun, somehow hearing them through the chaos, shot one, sidestepped, and punched a second as it passed, turning and shooting the third as it shot by. David! Jade ist in Ordnung. Gehen Sie zurück zu decken. I called, reverting to Germain in panic as 6 bolts peppered the ground in front of me. I saw his ears snap back. Something pushed him into a deeper rage than before. What the hey? Oh bucking hey! He'd fought Germain speakers last time he was in a war. You're a bucking idiot, Lily. David swept his gun up and fired multiple rounds, a loud absolutely delightful ping accompanying his last shot. I had no idea what made that ping, but it was a lovely sound. It was like seeing a single rose amid a field of smoldering embers. A green starburst exploded in my face. Earring burned. Static crackled as my shields failed. Right. Fighting now. I put all the energy I could muster into throwing up a shield, the best one I knew how to do. 4 layers, each made of small sections, rotating so no part could be hit twice in succession. David fiddled with his gun a moment, swept it back up and continued firing. The airborne changelings drawing his cold, wordless, wrath. I had to get him out of here before. A changeling zipped down behind him, horn glowing as it charged a bolt. I jumped, throwing myself into the path of its dive, shield sparking as the changeling crushed itself, hitting the barrier, throwing me into David's back, knocking us both flat. A loud screech trumped from somewhere behind us, followed a fraction of a second later by a pink shield racing over the 2 of us, pushing the swarm back, but sliding harmlessly over the 2 of us. You two! Get back here! The shields won't stop them for long! Princess Celestia shouted. I looked up. The mages working the shield amps had extended a shield over our position, making a small safe spot in the chaos of battle that protected the pylons and everyone nearby. The bulk of the swarm smashed against the shield, or threw spell bolts at it, flashes of energy sizzling up as the shield's power was slowly drained. I turned to help David up as I slid off of him, only noticing the half-dozen burn marks from spell bolts then. He was hurt bad. Back, arms, legs, neck. Got neen. I gasped, quickly holding a hoof to his neck to check for a pulse. It was there, faint, but there. Just unconscious. Good. I carefully picked David up in my magic and carried him back to the trench. Is he? Jade whimpered as I lowered him to the kinda safety of the trench's bottom. Neen, he's alive, I sighed. He thought you died when you were shot. Every pony. Celestia called, the battle is going poorly. Luna has asked me to put all my power into these shields. We cannot let them take us down. Everyone who can fight needs to expand those trenches and get ready to attack the moment they break through. Luna is sending reinforcements the second they have an opening to get through the enemy line. The sudden flurry of activity blurred together into a chaotic mess of digging, packing sand into walls, and mages conjuring salt and iron dust to paint wards onto the ground. If only my particular art didn't take time had come to use. I could make each pony's skin as hard as iron, maximize their magical throughput so they could use as much power at once as their horn would permit. Digging was good too though. Yes. Earthwork fortifications. So far they were pretty helpful. Ha ha ha. Oh Faust, I was so dead. There were millions of them. Millions of them and maybe a few tens of thousands of us. Maybe I could get a pass on account of being Dusk's friend? I hoped that's how it worked. I mean, I'd let my friends not die if I were death. Please don't actually be dead. Please just be recovering and thus able to put me back after these things turn me into paste. I didn't notice until the fourth time my name was shouted that the watch Sky had given me was glowing through the side of my saddlebag. I took the small thing out with my magic, hoping it wasn't about to explode. Oh, thank bucking Celestia! Sky's voice shouted, a tiny static image of him on the watch face, tell every pony around you to get the buck down. Something exploded behind Sky, 3 sapphire-shelled changelings suddenly flying across the background as if thrown. Sky! I can't hold them off forever. Give up and let's go. 1 minute. I finally got through. Sky shouted back. Was? I asked in horrified shock. We're being hit, hard. Sky yelled, they dug through the floor. I guess they realized this would be your fallback point. Look, you need tell every pony to find cover. Kev and I were trying to get a torpedo bank online to provide artillery support. The swarm broke something when digging through, and something launched. I have no bucking clue what it is, and I can't abort it because the controls are fried. It was sitting in a tube we hadn't checked yet. Everything was locked onto your position because we were going to fire as soon as we cleared the last. Just get down. Every pony get down. His voice melted into the sound of shattering glass as the entire world turned white. Sound came back first. There was a sound like rushing wind in a raging river. It consumed everything in the world. Sight came back second. I was sliding down a flowing river of sand on the side of a huge crater. It was like a huge lake bed just appeared beneath us. I slid down the side, ponies, changelings, piles of burning something, it didn't matter, everything slid down the steep rim, tumbling into a heap at the flat bottom. I lay there groaning, battered, bruised, and deaf in one ear at the bottom of a pile of bodies. Some alive, others not. After a few seconds I started to squirm free of the pile, slowly pulling myself free. I was now standing in a flat crater bottom, maybe 100 meters across, with the entire battlefield packed into it. The sky was mostly changeling free now, but plenty of the swarm were worming their way free of the sand on the crater walls, floor, and from the pile of bodies. As I watched, surviving ponies began to resume the battle as the swarm seemed to just take the cataclysm in stride. Well, I suppose it's good most of their stronghold is in my hooves now. A very horrifyingly familiar voice said nonchalantly. We wouldn't want another one of those, now would we? I turned to look in horror at an entirely unscathed chrysalis, calmly trotting towards me, only a few body lengths away. Now then, where were we before your idiot friend interrupted us? I felt my heart size up in panic. She was literally resuming right where she left off? Why? What was the point? Ah yes, that's right. Chrysalis laughed, horn starting to blaze green. Oh. Bug. No. Author's note. This cliffhanger is dedicated to Crimson Ian. I hope it satisfies you, my good friend. End author's note.